And very good. We're streaming.
Okay, guys. Here's what's going on. This is a Q&A, basically physical cosmology, and whatever you guys want to ask, we're up for that. And glad you're here. Glad you're watching on stream. And I approve and get in and do the work. Maybe she do it in the group, but not of us.
We don't believe in the upward floating disk theory of gravity. This is important for you guys. This is documentary.
We don't believe in pancakes. I like pancakes, but I like this. Like we pancakes. We don't believe in this pancake floating around Saturn. Robbie Davidson, I love the channel. Also,
Jack Taylor, website whereverwelook.com. You have on YouTube, Jack Taylor, and Facebook, Jack Taylor. Rob Skiba, you can find him at Rob Skiba. And got so many websites. You might go to robschannel.com and see how to get you everywhere else. And
I'm Rick Hummer. I'm Rob's secretary. I'm a flat earther. The normal person that's come to know this cosmology through just the gift of the Most High. By all. All. And I think we're all doing it. I made Wolfe my YouTube channel Inspired Tree. I have a new book out that chronicles all the crazy things that have to do with last year. Mostly good stuff though, and I appreciate all these guys. All of these guys have encouraged me throughout this year, so otherwise I would not be here. And I know a lot of people watching and praying for me for months, so thank you so much. And just excited to be here today.
have any questions?
Yeah, we were really Q&A.
I have a question. My partners have friends that are in North Carolina, and they have there's these areas like the portals. I guess they do like some of the New Agers are going out there and using some of these areas. I guess that have very, I guess essentially like ley lines or something like that. How does that work with like the dome and like portals and stuff like that?
Everybody know what ley lines are? Ley lines are essentially like an energetic grid of the Earth. With many of the megalithic structures, like the different megalithic structures around the world, are on these lines of energy that are on the Earth. Now, if you look up ley lines and Google them, you might see something like the Mercator map that has lines marked out where they believe that energy origins are. But what's interesting, and I don't remember who it was that actually wrote this woman decided to see what those same lines would look like mapped out on the flat Earth map. And when she did,
the same lines that she took from the Mercator map onto the circle of the Earth map turned into the flower of life, the seed of life symbol, which just so happens to be the symbol on the flag of the planet Earth. If you look up, and I think that's the website, flagoftheplanetEarth.com or something like that, flag of planet Earth. Somebody out there decided it'd be cool if we had a flag that represents the whole world. And so it's a blue flag with a white seed of life symbol on it, which just so happens to be what the ley lines come out to on the circle of the Earth. So that's interesting. As far as portals go, I don't really think anybody knows exactly how that works. They just believe that there are certain places, hot spots, if you will, where supernatural manifestations take place and or UFO type of things, UFO flaps seem to reoccur. I don't know why they are where they are. I just know that there are people who believe that there are. Like Mount Shasta is one of the big ones. Four Corners there in New Mexico and Arizona, that area, is another big hot spot. A number of others, maybe still know. Probably Mount Hermon would be a massive portal, I would think. What does that look like in either model? I don't really know. It appears to be a place where stuff seems to regularly happen. I think a lot of times also, at least from what I have looked into in that topic, that usually high occult ritual type things have took place in these spots, so they become frequent spots. Now, so the question is, the egg before the chicken or the egg, which came first? Was it the activity that opened up something in that area, or was that area that welcomed the activity? I don't really know. But guys like Jack Parsons was out doing specific things in specific places. NASA picks sites specifically for certain reasons. So do a lot of occultists. So there appears to be something to it, but I don't know.
I think we all understand the moon landing and stuff like that. What's your best guess about what the future is? Connection, plasma ball.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'll say about the moon is that I was never taught that it put off its own light, and that coincides with Genesis. And one of the things in Genesis when it says that he's going to put the two lights in the sky, one to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. When you look at the word lesser, it means to go below the norm, which is obvious, we know that, or to go below. And when we measure the moonlight, and people have done this, and some people say, well, you can't do it. I've done it in snow. And it's a cold light. And it's also a septic light. So what the moonlight does is, if you ever notice, you're never going to see, sounds gross, sorry if you just ate, but maggots going around during the daytime and daylight. But in the moonlight, they flourish. So the moon is doing the opposite of what the sun is doing, is what I believe. I believe that it's part of the helping things decay. Like in the jungle, if something dies in the jungle, there's a certain type of, I think it's a bacteria or fungus that will literally grow only at night. And something can actually really just be eaten up within a day or two. It's gone. Now the animals will get it too, but I do believe that the moon actually can cause a degenerative than what the sun would do, and that would be like to cure something. So I noticed that myself just by looking at so many things, because I was so intrigued by the moon doing that. And then the other thing is too, I was going to ask you this about the craters on the moon. A lot of people say, well, it looks 3D, and the moon looks like it's got this, this light coming off of it, and it very well could be. But I just wondered if the actual light is actually in the center of the moon. Yeah.
Well, yeah, other people, Nathan Thompson has talked about this in his presentation, that if it's reflecting, then it should have a specular highlight. It should have a hot spot, and then the light should fade as it kind of goes around the curvature of the moon. I personally think it's either a half sphere or a sphere. I think it is a physical object. I know some people think it's more of a hologram or projection or something. I tend to believe personally that it's a physical object. I don't believe it's something you can land on or get to. But what was interesting, I went to the Griffith Observatory in Hollywood. You've seen it in many movies. It's a pretty famous place. And two things, when I walked in there, first of all, three things. When you walk in there, the ceiling is painted with pagan deities, like right off the bat. Okay, wow, it's like hardcore pagan, deities and stuff like that. And there's this huge, probably the most famous full clock pendulums in the country is right there. And the tour guide that was giving the tour was talking about this thing, and then said, "Oh yeah, and by the way, this thing is run by an electromagnetic motor up in the ceiling." And I'm like, "Is this not even computing what you just said?" We think supposedly a full clock pendulum proves the Earth's rotating, right? So it should be the rotation of the Earth that's making this thing move. But no, it's an electromagnetic motor that's in the ceiling, and they even admit it. Yeah. So it's making that thing go around. Well, they also had a display, lots of displays on how things work. And when it came to the display on how the moon phases work, you would think that they would have, the way we are told that the moon phases work, is that the moon's going around the Earth's going around the sun, and the various angles that the sun is hitting the moon as it's doing that, and as we're doing that around the sun, is what causes the phases. It's angles, the way the sunlight's hitting the moon. So you would think they would have a source light representing the sun, an Earth going around it, and a moon going around the Earth to illustrate what they're saying takes place. No, they had a self-illuminating orb going in a circle. And the self-illuminated moon is making the phases depending on what angle you're looking at it. So I was like, isn't that interesting? I later went, and when I heard about the moon like this, I was actually doing a conference in Lubbock, Texas, talking about the Nephilim and stuff like that. And this older gentleman comes out, and he's like, "Yeah, I gotta show you something. So we go outside, he takes this laser thing and points to the ground, and then we went, and it was in the shade of the building. It was like a half moon, like a gibbous moon or something. And so where the moon was casting, the building was casting a shadow. So we tested that, and then we went out into the area where the direct moonlight was, and it was actually colder in the direct moonlight than in the shade. Now, some people say, well, that's radiance and different things. They'll come up with all kinds of excuses why that happens. So I'm like, okay. So I went to Walmart and bought one of those trifold foam core presentation boards, and I kept it in my car. I looked for a good place where I could do a test, and so I opened it up like this. So this part is not getting moonlight, and this part is getting moonlight. And I'm talking matters of seconds. I shot this, and then I shot this, and it was almost a 10-degree difference. So that's coming directly out of my car. You can't say that, for whatever reason, this area was exposed longer than this or whatever. No. It was the whole thing was in the atmosphere of the area where I was at the same time. In the area that was not getting moonlight, it was warmer than the area that was getting moonlight was colder. So it's totally opposite, because outside direct sunlight is warm and shadow is cold. It didn't make sense to me.
The thing that I found interesting is salt water is a major conductor. With not more than this water out here, obviously. We're always taught that the moon controls the tides. It was, I don't know what year it was, I want to say it was around 2012, somewhere in there. And I was taking the trash out one night, and I was walking down the driveway, and I just happened to look up, and I was looking at the moon, and I'm like, this is really weird looking. Like, something's not right with the moon. This coloring was off, and I really thought for the first time, I'm like, the moon spun. I'm actually seeing the side of the moon I've never seen before. That's what I was looking at. And I running in, I took the trash can down the road, and I came back, and I grabbed my wife. I'm like, come on here and look. And I had her look at the moon. I go, what's different about the moon right now? And I think, didn't you say the space is... Yeah, you're like, I don't know, it looks weird. Didn't you say the man on the moon's in a different spot or something? So I was like, that's what, and I did this, and I realized it's like it was rotated this way, not this way, but it actually rotated this way. So I went running in the house thinking, this is going to be awesome. It's going to be on the news. There's going to be tsunamis everywhere, because that's what we're told. If the moon moves anyway, it can create tsunamis, and it's going to be devastating, this and that. And I went in, and it had been like that for 2 days. And L.A. Marzulli had actually done a piece on it, talking about, it was 135 degrees that it had rotated. And they had gone to Pepperdine University, to the observatory there, and they wouldn't talk about it. They didn't want to say anything.
So right then and there, it didn't affect the oceans at all. Nothing. But when I go back to this conductivity of what the salt water does, one thing that we know is the sun attracts that salt water. So if you're on the land and the sun is out here, hey, put the sun up for me. Put the sun in here. So there's the sun. The salt water is going to be drawing away from this coastline towards the sun. I truly believe that on this flat plane or this flat earth, that the oceans could actually rise out towards the sun magnetically, and then when the moon comes back around, it pushes them back. So that's how I do believe that could be part of how we're getting our tides. I can't prove that, but that's my theory, that the sun and the moon are actually controlling the tides.
If you look at the areas on the earth where the tide the amplitude of the tide is different.
Well, real quick, I know one thing a lot of people get hung up on is lunar eclipses. Well, how does that possibly work in this model? Well, if the moon is giving off its own light and it can project its own phases, well, all the eclipses is just going through those phases faster. So it's just a time thing. So I don't think it's something to get hung up on. And I get a lot of people that don't like me saying this, but there are some things I truly believe we cannot understand and we will not know in this lifetime. And I do think we know enough to know the moon is not what we're told it is. It does all these kind of things that these guys have talked about. Beyond that, I think we're kind of getting into speculation, and I'm totally okay with not knowing exactly what the moon is. I'm totally okay with not knowing what are the foundations of the earth sat on. I mean, God told Job, you don't know, is a gist. And so there's some things we just don't know. And so I'm totally okay with those kind of things. Some people have a really hard time with not knowing all the answers. And to me, it's not, there's some things that are not for us to know. We're not God. We cannot understand a lot of these kind of things.
I got a question since you said that. Just out of curiosity. So what do you think the moon is? Like you don't think it's something that you live on? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I don't know. Cami Nodell has some interesting theories as to what it's made out of. Celestine, do you guys remember? I think it's something like Celestine or something. I don't know. It's a porous rock that when water gets on it, it craters. And so I thought, well, isn't that interesting? Because if you look at the moon, all the craters are straight on. There's none coming in at an angle. Yeah, there's no meteorites, but I mean, everything's like a perfect circle. There's no nothing came in at an angle, sides. So it's like everything came in, boom. So, she said, water would do that. And I thought, isn't that interesting? Because the scripture says that the fountains of the deep were broken up first, and then the windows of heaven opened. So if it is a physical structure and it's made out, and I think she also said that particular material is a phosphorescent, or what is the word? Like the watch, where you go in the dark watch, you expose it to light, and then you expose it to light, but then it generates its own light. So in a sense, if that's the case, then it is receiving some light from the sun, but then it's projecting its own light. And if it is that material, then maybe that explains the craters. Is everything came up from the earth. The fountains of the deep broke up first, and the windows of heaven came down. And it could be impact, or it could just simply be cratering the way this particular rock craters. At least that's what she was saying. I don't know enough about it. I don't know anything, but she's a gemologist. She works with stones and all that kind of stuff. So you'd have to look up Bob and Cami Nodell's work on that. But when I first heard it, I said, wow, that's pretty interesting.
This may be kind of an oversimplification, but I consider myself a simple man. And I just had a thought one day. I was thinking about the moon, and I believe that the moon gives her own light. That's what Scripture says. And I came inside, and my wife asked me to turn on some more light in the living room. And behind our couch, there's a light stand that has one of those three-way bulbs, where you can click it and it can go low or medium or high. I just thought to myself, maybe the moon is similar to something like that. Obviously, it's by the Father's design. But when you think about the phases of the moon, it would be nothing for the Father, to make these cycles or phases of the moon to just be more like, advancing or waning clicks, if you will, of luminescence. And just a thought, I don't know if that's true, but popped into my mind, so sharing it.
Also, there's a toy called Moon in My Room, and I have one too. It's a self-illuminating moon, and I'm going, if Hasbro or whatever company it was that made this can figure this out. Just maybe, the creator could have done something similar. So it's a simple plot here.
Yeah, I was wondering if you guys,
Yeah, this became a huge issue for me to resolve, at least within my own mind, prior to the debate with Dr. Robertson Dennis. Now, he was hung up on that. He was really hung up on that issue. And even in his book, he addresses this. The word "in" can mean two things. It can mean like the peppermint is in the candy. So, it's part of it. Or we are in this room. I'm not part of the walls, I'm not part of the ceiling, I'm in the room. In that context, it's inside. I come from the position of the sun, moon, and stars being inside. I know there are others who differ on that, but that's my understanding of what I'm reading there in the text. And because the word bait, the word bait comes from the letter bait, and the letter bait means house, as does the word bait. It's house, it's a dwelling place. And we see in Psalm 19 that he made a chamber, a tabernacle, a dwelling place for the sun to do its circuit. So, based on that, I'm going with the premise that the sun and the moon and the stars are in the firmament the same way we are in this room.
Yeah, I agree in the firmament, but contained within the firmament is what Ezekiel talks about in Ezekiel 1, the wheels within the wheels, and the spirits move to and fro. So that's why if you look up planetary apps and stuff, all the planets are in a line across the sky, like a perfect ring shape. And that's why I think we get the star trails all making perfect circles around the northern pole star, is because they're on wheels. And they put it in our face with all sorts of stuff. You'll see the wheels within the wheels in Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, all sorts of sci-fi stuff. They'll put these wheels within the wheels. So yeah, I agree with Rob inside the firmament, but the way they're operating is how Ezekiel describes in Ezekiel 1. So. Oh, and by the way, there's a song by John Lennon. I'm just sitting here watching the wheels go round and round, no longer on the merry-go-round. People say I'm crazy. People say I lost my mind. But that's a lot of truth in music. And so we all live in the Yellow Submarine.
I also agree that the sun and the moon are within the firmament, within the dome, like we are in this room, like Rob said. And the reason why I go with that is if the sun and the moon can be in the midst of the clouds are in the dome, it's like we're in this room, ergo, the sun and the moon have to be within the dome as well. Now, a lot of people fight against that because there was a distortion because the sun and moon are so bright that they fade out the clouds, and you see an illusion of their placement relative to the sun and the moon. But if you look at the very edges, okay, of those two discs, when they're lighting up the clouds and they look like they're overexposed between objects, it's illuminating, then the edges of the light source will not be crisp. It will be faded out and fogged out because it's distorting your view of the object, of the obstruction. So because it's within the cloud, and the clouds are obviously within the dome, then the sun and moon would have to be within the dome.
Yeah, this is a plug for Chad Taylor's book, Where Are We, Earth According to the Bible. When I came last year, my wife and I, right before I got fired, I spent the better part of those 3 weeks going through Genesis 1 and in fervent prayer, and then also following along with a lot of items in Chad's book. And I remember I was looking up some of the Hebrew terminology as I went through. So I was going very, slow, several verses a day, and that's it. And if I remember correctly, it just kind of blew me away because just for whatever connection, my name is Nathan, right? Well, phonetically, Hebrew to English, that word, if I remember correctly, that God set them in the firmament is Nathan, okay? So it blew me away because I felt personally like it was almost like he set me, Nathan, in this discussion. I don't know why. And then the name Nathaniel, okay, Nathaniel is akin to like gift of El or gift of God. So when he set the sun, moon, and stars in the firmament, it was actually a gift to man. Yes, because he tells us, I created these lights for light on the earth, for signs, seasons, days, and years, and also for warmth, okay? So the sun, moon, and stars, yes, they're in the firmament. Yes, they are lights. But also, let's not forget, they're actually a gift from the Father to man because they are for us. Next question.
Robbie kind of touched on it, I think, but about that airplanes, how would they learn? How would they land north and south? The Earth was really spinning, or how wouldn't the plane go quicker from the west to the east than it would go against the spinning? I don't believe it is spinning, but how do they explain that way?
Yeah, I mean, I brought that up just in basic terms, but yeah, there's major problems with, you're looking at many aspects when it comes to airlines and just the way what we've been taught. I think, if anything, someone here could speak more on depth on that. If you want to go more deeper level, we start with Nathan, and if anyone else wants to touch on it, because these guys can get really deep and explain exactly how.
So it's alleged that the Earth moves 1,039 miles an hour at the equator, but globe earthers will tell you the atmosphere moves with the Earth. Now, in order for that to happen, the higher up you go, the atmosphere would have to move faster because it's traveling a larger circumference. So what force would cause that? Can't say gravity. It only pulls inward towards center of mass, and that's presupposed, never proven, not a theory, doesn't pass the scientific method. So, but yes, exactly. So there's another model where the atmosphere is being blended by the topography of the Earth. If that were the case, we would have what's called a Coriolis effect. Neil deGrasse Tyson's famous for saying that field goals are made or missed based on the Earth's Coriolis effect, but Earth does not rotate under airplanes, hot air balloons, insects, smoke, or any balls you throw in the air. So Neil deGrasse Tyson is lying because he's an actor, and he has to pretend you live on a spinning globe. And so what happens is they all become double-speaking, scientifically illiterate globe earthers that tell you there's a Coriolis effect, but the atmosphere moves with the Earth. So a Coriolis, by definition, is a secondary reference frame moving separately from the Earth. So they teach that if things go up in the atmosphere and leave Earth, the Earth rotates underneath. But we do not observe this. And there's no difference in journey times for airplanes east to west and west to east. Hope that was detailed for you guys. Here you go.
I'm glad Nathan sugarcoats things, because the only thing I would add, I agree 1,000% with what you just said, but I've had a flight instructor on one of my shows, and he was very, very adamant about the fact that day one, the training manual for a pilot says you are to assume that the Earth is not moving and that it's a stationary plane essentially. And he said that all software for the flights, planes are built on this assumption. And the pilots obviously don't correct for that. And when they do their flight plans, everything is planned around in the training around a flat stationary Earth. He said, never do we ever then make that jump to reality that the Earth is curved and moving. He said they are just basically to assume that the software handles all that. Bottom line. He says, but you start, anybody in the industry will quickly, I think, start extrapolating from there and go, well, where do we make that change from the book to reality when everything we learn in the classroom is that the Earth is flat and stationary and everything is based on it? He said, you need to make sure, just be real glad that the Earth isn't curved and it isn't moving, because the airline industry would not exist if it did, because the planes are built and the software is designed based on reality, or they wouldn't work. So,
and to back up what you just said, I had this friend named Roland that was up in Canada, and I challenged him to go up to a pilot and ask him, if they have to dip their nose every so often to follow the curvature. And the pilot told him it just happens naturally. Yeah, it just happens naturally. And he said it like it was no big deal. It just happens naturally. So it happens naturally. Yeah, automagically. Thank you. Yes, automagically. So once again, we're dealing with the darkness. It is what it is. And the thing that always got me is you'll have guys that'll talk about long range, bullets. Let's just say you're doing long range target shooting. And there are Marines out there that are on YouTube, at least they say they're Marines, might be stolen valor here, but they're saying that they have to basically put that into their shot. They have to think this through. And I know nobody that shoots guns that has ever thought that through on a long range shot. The only thing that I've ever seen them do is take some grass and throw it in the air to see where the wind's blowing. That's it. And most barrels, they have to have a groove in them, a relief groove. And that groove will actually put a small spiral, can put a small spiral on a bullet as it releases. And I don't know if you've ever anybody thrown a Nerf football in the wind. If you throw it just right, you can get it to curve. You can get a really good curve ball if you throw a duck. So that's what it is. And not too long ago, there was an electrical fire. Actually, there's a generator that caught on fire at an electrical distribution place for Indiana Electric. And the smoke, there was no wind that day. And people drove an hour and 15 minutes trying to figure out what this line of smoke was in the air from where they were at. An hour and 15 minutes. They drove almost all the way from Fort Wayne, Indiana to just south of South Bend, Indiana. It's a long drive. 80-some miles. And they made the trip, and they couldn't believe what it was. Like, that? They thought it was something major. It was like, it's oil. It's burning hot, black smoke going all the way up. And when I thought about this, I'm like, you know what? I should just send this over to some people, because I actually caught it with the drone. And what I noticed is that it was so straight up and down, it was almost creepy. Like, there's no wind. There's no wind. And if you think about this, they want you to believe that it affects bullets. But like Nate said, it doesn't affect insects. It doesn't affect ladybugs or helium balloons. There's no wind, it's not going to move. It'll just sit there. And that smoke proved it. And I don't think there's anything more elementary about it than that.
One of the words that keeps popping up over and over and over in my personal studies regarding biblical cosmology, and I really didn't set out this winter to do a lot on cosmology for my personal studies. I was just reading through the first 5 books, and then through the prophets and Psalms, and this in English it's translated face, the face of the deep, the face of the waters, the face of the land, the face of the earth. In Revelation, it's the breadth of the earth. Spend some time going through the scriptures, and that word probably pops up more than anything I've found as far as related to biblical cosmology. Look at the face of the waters out here. I mean, the same word is being used to describe the face of the land as it is the face of the waters. And, of course, now all of these words are popping out at me. And I'm not even
I'm purposely trying not to notice biblical cosmology. I'm just trying to get some spiritual encouragement here. And this word face is coming up over and over and over again. And I was having a conversation months ago. I think I was talking to Robbie, and I'm sitting on my couch, and I had him on speakerphone. So my daughter, Hannah, who's 15, she was listening in. Of course, we think their kids aren't listening, but she was dialed in. And we were talking about something about the face of the earth, and she says, she just pipes up. She's like, well, Dad, a sphere or globe does not have a face. She says, I'm in ninth grade geometry. And she says, that shape does not have a face. And I'm just like, okay, thanks for that. Just got schooled. And that's, that's in a public school. They're teaching that today in public school geometry. Clock has a face. Yeah.
Only flat surfaces have a face. And the other thing that you'll see, Nate, is the repeated phrase, in the earth. You walked about in the earth. Go be fruitful in the earth. Be fruitful, multiply in the earth. Over and over and over again. Some English translations put on the earth, but that's not correct. If you look up in the Hebrew, it's ba-ha'aretz. Ha'aretz being the earth. Whenever the bait is in front of it, it means in. So it is in the earth. That only makes sense in an enclosed world system. Unless we're all troglodytes.
If anyone has a piece of paper for me so I don't take notes on my leg, that'd be great. Guys, the Red Bull jump, when he ascended for 3 hours, Earth did not rotate under him, and he landed back in New Mexico, 50 miles from where he took off. So whenever globe earthers love to point out that there's a fisheye lens that distorts the horizon, they won't say this, but when there's a fisheye lens distorting the horizon, Neil deGrasse Tyson admits it's flat from 128,000 feet up. But what you got to notice is the Earth did not rotate under the Red Bull space jump. So what that means is no civilian, period, is seeing any curvature because you have to go on a space jump at 128,000 feet and it's still flat. So no one ever has seen curvature. Don't ever let them tell you you've seen it from a plane or anything like that. Also, if there was a Coriolis that snipers were accounting for, they would be retrained on it every time they moved locations or moved to a new military base. Ask them if this happens. They don't. They don't readjust every time they're at a new base because each latitude would have a different speed relative to where it is from the equator. And you can figure that out with cosines and stuff. If you guys need, let me know. Email me, nathanppl@yahoo.com. But also the Foucault pendulum. They would have to adjust the Foucaults at every latitude depending on where they are if the Earth's Coriolis is what's causing the Coriolis effect, which is not an experiment, not proof of anything. There's no independent variable, and there's no naturally occurring observation. So it is a effect conjured within the apparatus, similar to the balls that were clinging together, Cavendish. So it's an effect conjured by the apparatus, and it's not observed in nature. And I'll end with breath, as Nathan was saying. In the Hebrew, means plateaus. It's where we get the word for plateau. So yeah, when he says breath of the earth, he's talking about a flat earth. And that's in the second verse of Genesis. So if a Christian ever says, where in the Bible does it say the earth's flat? Just ask them if they've made it to the second sentence yet. The second verse. It's in there. All right, great.
I wanted to make a comment on the Foucault pendulum, which is my favorite toy. In the History Museum in Cleveland, Ohio, they have a Foucault pendulum. Now, the pendulum is based on the rotation of the Earth. It's supposed to keep swinging based on the rotation of the Earth. So that pendulum's movement is supposed to be perpetual. As long as the Earth is moving, it should keep moving. Now, of course, we know this is wrong. So then I wanted to ask them about it, but I don't want to be confrontational because this is deep in the movement at this point. So some of these guys know about it. So I walked over to them and I said, wow, that pendulum is pretty awesome. How often do you have to reestablish the swing of the pendulum? He said, we have to restart it every day. We have to restart it every day, and we have a little electric motor at the top that keeps it moving. I said, thank you so much, thank you. Okay.
And they don't even compute what they just said.
Yeah. But they have a plaque there that tells you exactly it's moving based on the Earth movement, yet they have a little motor, and they push the thing to keep it moving.
Yeah. It's like the globe earthers pick something up and drop it, what caused that? Like, you just picked something up, and then you
This is a question for the panel because I've heard this, and I'm curious if you guys have also heard or read this. Talking about the pendulum, we're also talking about the eclipse. Have you guys seen or read about what happens to the Foucault pendulum during an eclipse? Anybody want to chime in on that? Remember the term Eskelion or something? There's a term for it. I can't remember, but yeah, apparently solar eclipses make Foucault pendulums do all kinds of stuff. Well, how would an object 93 million miles away being obscured by another object that's 230 something thousand miles or a million miles away or whatever it is, the moon? How far is the moon? Quarter of a million, 238,000 miles. How would objects playing around, dancing out there that far away affect a Foucault pendulum? Unless it's electromagnetic and it's a lot closer to the Earth. Yeah. Yeah, that is crazy. There's lots of numerous documented cases on it. And speaking of eclipses, there's also plenty of eclipses that take place while the sun and the moon are both still up.
Yep. What do you think about the lunar wave?
I don't know what to think about the lunar wave. I've watched quite a number of the Crow 777 videos on it, and I'm fascinated by it. I'm not entirely convinced it's not just a refresh rate on the camera or something, but he's saying it's a refresh rate of the moon. And yeah, I'm fascinated by his work. I would point people to Crow 777 on the issue of the lunar wave. Are you guys all familiar with that? You guys know what that is? He's done just a ton of shoot the moon. Okay, yeah. He's done a lot of observation of the moon and with high definition cameras and stuff like that. Even in 4K, I think, hasn't he? Or at least higher definition. Anyway, every now and then there'll be like what looks like a refreshment, like the screen is refreshing itself, like a line will come down. Yeah, it's bizarre. I mean, it's really weird. Like
Other people have seen it.
other people have seen it. Anybody else heard more than that?
What I will say is I'm not going to say his name, but he's a professional cinematographer. No, don't say his name. He's trying not to. Don't say it. He wants to keep his anonymity, and I don't blame him. But here's the reason why. There's many reasons why. But the thing that he caught was, and he set out to actually capture the shot, and a plane went through the air. Out of view. Yeah, and he caught the high-speed plane. Yeah.
Pro 777 is a lot invested in this new phenomenon called the lunar wave, but it could just be that from an airplane.
And we don't know how far the airplane waves will actually go. We don't know. No one's actually done a study on this. But you're right. It was 240 frames per second is what he was shooting. So it was a high rate of speed, and he's not far from an airport. I'm not saying that Crow didn't see the other planes, but they could have been a long ways away. If you're talking about water, and we're breathing water. This is a form of water that we're breathing. Who knows what kind of wave goes on up that high? I don't know. I don't know how it works. But I know this. He caught it. And it came in right after the airplane. So.
The Pro show also has two ways to improve the craters this place. Never come back to it.
Yeah. That could be, yeah.
And that's not by a weight point.
Wow, so the wave actually scored.
The craters are displaced.
That sounds a lot like
Or a refreshment rate of projection. Maybe some of those guys might have something there. Yeah. Well, actually, yeah. To Robbie's point, none of us knows what the moon is. There's two guys, I can't think of the name of their show now, but they do some pretty good stuff. They're with the Ancient Aliens crowd and stuff. But they did a whole thing on how mainstream science says there's just a ton of weirdness about the moon. Like lots of things that just don't make sense to anybody. And so consequently their conclusion is the moon is an artificial construct. And that they'll say the moon is hollow, they'll say all kinds of stuff about the moon. How is it there? Why is it there? Why is it this perfect distance and all this stuff? So in the Ancient Aliens crowd, they're saying that this is like a Death Star that was parked there to, check us out and do stuff. So they don't even know. I don't think anybody really knows what it is.
guys have ever looked at a yin and a yang symbol? That's a flat Earth map. It's just really vague and doesn't have any of the land drawn on it. But the sun and moon, other than being the same size, relatively equidistant to the Earth, and both self-illuminating, in my opinion, are complete opposites. Sunlight is hot, pyrophosphorescent, so golden yellow, and causes a preserving effect, how they make beef jerky. Moonlight's bluish silver, not pyrophosphorescent, but cold. You can test it with a laser thermometer. Putrefying, so it causes the opposite effect, causes a decaying effect, and has none of the characteristics. So that's where we get the yin and the yang, the hot and the cold, the male and the female. So instead of giving a cold light, I think somehow the moon is attracting energy from the atmosphere and self-illuminating itself that way. And also, like when you scrape your hand along when you fall off your bike and you scrape your hand on the ground, your whole hand doesn't get scraped. So it's similar to how the moon has shadows. As it's picking up its light from the atmosphere, the shadows could have topography, and the deeper parts don't get illuminated. I don't know if that's exactly how it's happening. I just think it's a cool theory.
Next question.
I have an observation theory. One day I was out taking a picture of the sunset, and right down here, 20 minutes ago, there's a little cloud. You could see the rays shooting right over the cloud up to this cloud. You could see the rays shooting down right in front of it. Well, I had occasion to turn around and just park right in front of it. I was staring at the cloud right back. And if you go right back at 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, I noticed that this cloud over here at my 4 o'clock was actually getting its sunlight. The shadows on the cloud were actually being projected from the sun. They weren't coming this direction. In fact, when you looked at the 8 o'clock, you got the opposite perspective. The sunlight was actually coming from here, casting a shadow down this way. So my suggestion, which is a little crazier than history, is what you may actually have is little miniature light domes. God creates the light 3 days before the sun shows up. Maybe there's a series of these little light domes which will explain why you get this effect that people photograph. You see the sun coming right between two clouds. It's some type of light, extra dimensional perhaps. It's popping up. Maybe are even little Jacob's ladders, little rapes, maybe a little highway in the sky that the prophet sees the traffic. It's one of the circuit routes. Yeah, sure, there's probably a real sun in the firmament, but I think everything that you see is actually being created by this light. Maybe different sizes, times, they may have overlaps, they may form different patterns. I challenge anybody to go out, turn around, look back. When you have clouds on both sides, and watch the entire time, somehow the dome is either pivoting light around the dome and or bouncing, reflecting it. Now just watch the shadows on the clouds, and it's pretty undeniable that there's something else going on here.
Well, yeah, I don't think we understand just how the firmament affects the sunlight, how it reflects around. That would make sense if there's a mirror on the backside, a curve-shaped, concave-shaped mirror behind the sun. How does that affect the sunlight that we get?
Well, I'm suggesting that there is a firmament, but in addition, there are these small light waves. If you could see the sun literally sometimes at 12 o'clock high up in a 22,000 foot cumulus, people photograph it right at 12 o'clock high. Pilot shooting down the pictures of the sun at 28 to 32,000, to 36,000. Everybody has their own little picture. Everybody has their own little dome. Literally billions of suns and moons going on all across the earth simultaneously.
Yeah, look at the shadows on each individual shadow.
But also, if you guys have ever taken a water bottle, like a big one, and held a flashlight up to it, it'll illuminate the entire room. So we're told that water is above the firmament, and I think a similar type of effect might be happening to where the sunlight is illuminating all the water behind, and that's how we get the ambient light. So when you stand outside, there's not a shadow on the side of your face, and then the sun is over here. You're getting light from all around you, and that's because we have a firmament above us, and it's causing ambient light.
Anybody playing softball? Because it's supposed to be starting at 4.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking at the clock. Maybe take one more question and then we'll wrap up.
There's a question from YouTube for Rob, and that is, what's next for Seed?
20 minutes, Rob.
Yeah,
It's only 20
I
minutes.
don't want to take up all the time on that. Yeah, seedtheseries.com. I have web information on seedtheseries.com. People can go there. Long story short, I'm on page 15 of 24 of the comic book, so we're almost done with the comic book. The video game is making some serious progress. We're very happy with that. Hoping to have that done by the end of the year. Still trying to raise funds. We've raised about $100,000 so far. We've got a long way to go. So anybody wants to support that, go to seedtheseries.com/make it happen. Make a TV series.
I had you guys start on playing Angels, and I would love to hear some more style on that. I have somebody here that's really interested about that. She's looking on, on the Bible, looking for. I understood the stars and angels were interchangeable in the Hebrew, and what she had discovered wasn't. I haven't had to really get into it, so I'd love to hear some more.
I'll just say real quick that the Book of Enoch tells you point blank the stars are a class of angels known as the heavenly luminaries. To me, there are many places in the Scripture that both directly and indirectly associate angels with stars. Revelation 9:1 most specifically says, "And I saw a star fall from heaven, and to him was given the keys to the shaft of the bottom of the pit." So, sentient being right there. There's another passage of Revelation talking about an angel standing in the sun. Old Testament references all over the place for the hosts of heaven as a phrase synonymous with the constellations and the stars, as well as the armies of God. So all of those, to me, tell you that, yeah, stars are angels.
And morning stars also like that issue of being called the bright morning star. Anybody have anything to add to that?
I don't have anything to add to that. I can't remember them off the top of my head. There's 2 pages in my book that bring this up about stars, angels, and heavenly hosts. I know at one point it talks about one of the angels came before the shepherds to tell them about the birth of Jesus, and then all of a sudden there's a multitude of the heavenly hosts right there with them, and then it talks about after the angels had gone up into the heaven, So there's a lot of times you'll see where angels, heavenly hosts are used interchangeably, along with stars as well. There's 2 pages in the book.
I mean, you have Satan, depicted when we're getting into stars. What I find fascinating with scientism, notice how we all came from stardust. No, we were created by a loving creator. It's there, plain and simple, and yet he wants to give recognition back to the stars. I find that very fascinating. Yeah, there's definitely an angelic, there's a sentiment, connection here. Again, I find it absolute mystery. I'm not 100% either way. I still think there's some interesting aspects. But again, like all of us on the panel, it's amazing on this really learning and adapting to what we learn. But I find that fascinating with that connection because, like I said, they're all saying, "Hey, be thankful to the stars for dying for you because we came from stars."
Yeah, I mean, Hollywood is a star.
While we're talking about what they are, I think we should mention what they're not. Second law of thermodynamics states you can't have gas pressure next to a vacuum. So if you think space is a vacuum, it violates a natural law called entropy, the second law of thermodynamics. And scientists, the heliocentric priests that tell you they go to the heavens in a rocket, will tell you that stars are gas pressure in a vacuum. If you Google the definition of a vacuum, it's the absence of gas pressure. So if space is a vacuum, there's no gas pressure in it, and there's no stars either. So stars don't work on a globe. Just I want to throw that out there. Stars work on a flat Earth.
Yeah. This movement gained tons of steam through YouTube.
obviously. It's being filtered now, but how did they let it go, the powers to be, let it go so long, get so big?
Gosh, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think God's great.
That's the only thing I can think of.
And they're extreme
I think, in my opinion, it's God allowing, by His grace, allowing all this information to come out. And I'm just so grateful we've had these amount of years of relative ease of getting information out yet. Now it's clamping down for sure, but we got a good run and good momentum going. It's just a matter of keeping it going. I definitely agree with that, but I also think they just had no clue that this would ever. Because think about what we all thought when we first heard the phrase flat Earth. All like, this is so stupid. This is so ridiculous. Why are we talking about this in the 21st century, right? I don't think anybody in a million years imagined, including me, that this would, that anybody would embrace this. So I think it took them by surprise. And now they're playing catch up. They're like, well, what's going on? And now what we're hearing a lot is this is dangerous. In fact, if you see the National Geographic special on the Salton Sea, which that test was a ridiculous sham, I was there to watch it. The host of that piece was like, "This is dangerous, don't you know? This is like dangerous." Like our face is all like, and using this thing like this is such an evil, dangerous thing. Like the world's gonna end tomorrow because people believe it's flat. Like they are truly scared. Even the CEO of YouTube said that flat Earth is a threat to humanity. That's why they're censoring. This was actually on a YouTube on their letter or whatever to the community. What's that? Yeah, of course. Yes, because 110-story buildings should fall down in their footprint and only leave 2.5 stories of debris, and not mess up the bottom level or the first sub-level.
So remember too in Scripture regarding the angels, stars, the heavenly host, Israel specifically was told not to worship. It wasn't just like, the Father was hoping they wouldn't. It's in the law. It's in the Torah. Do not worship. Specifically, he talks about the stars or the heavenly bodies. He talks about the host of heaven. So, a lot of times when we think about idolatry, we're thinking about, some carved with stone, stone or wood or whatever. But I've seen some evidence in Scripture to indicate that, yes, there were physical idols that they possessed, but there was some power behind. I mean, those people knew they weren't worshiping the rock. It represented, the idol represented, and it says that they worship demons. They sacrifice their children to demons. So keep that in mind. And then in reference to, how come they didn't, get this closed down before, remember Satan is a counterfeiter. He desired to be like the Most High, but he is not the Most High. And tactically, you think from a military standpoint, the Father, what happens when, the kings of the earth conspire against him in the Psalms? He laughs. He laughs. Why? Because tactically, sometimes I believe the Father will allow the hubris, the pride, even of Satan, and he will draw them in, but tactically, he's already 10 moves ahead of them. He's getting ready to destroy what they think is a victory.
Guys, by a show of hands, and I don't care if you're sweating, if you could add your friends to their subscriber count on YouTube, who would do that? Who would manually take your friends and sub their YouTube accounts to Robbie or Rick or Rob's or Michael's channel? You've done it, right? So if you could, you'd do them all, right? So what I recommend doing is they haven't figured everything out. They still have chinks in their armor, and we can still share Flat Earth with the masses. There's a group called the Official Flat Earth and Globe Discussion. You can add all your friends to that group, and they will get flat smacked. And that's how I started the group. I added 1,600 of my friends, and I said, all right, we're going to talk about Flat Earth, no cursing or insults. And they're like, what? Who ordained you to do this? And I was like, I don't know. Well, I think it's important, and it's going to reveal the truth about God. So if you care about God and you care about your friends, sharing is caring. Share the truth with people. And don't get emotionally attached to their reaction. Don't care. We're just Johnny Appleseed. Professional sort, amateurs convinced. So just plant seeds. I promise it'll be easier for your blood pressure.
I think that's a wrap. Thanks, Nathan.
All right, let's play softball.
Thanks, guys.
We'll give those guys a big round of applause.